Next speaker I have is Gail Grossman. Public comments.
Good evening. Gail Grossman, resident since 1970. I have a question to you regarding the layout of the agenda and your proposed actions. You should consider taking item 8C first, since you have been asking for input from the residents, and now the results of the survey are in, which we hope will influence your decisions on 8A and B. Now you have the residents' opinions. Please consider changing your order or just ignore us like you've been doing. Over the last couple of meetings regarding the budget and sales tax, you have taken everything together. You have given the community the impression that you will be voting on these two agenda items tonight. My question is that these two are different items and should be voted on separately, not together. From my understanding and a conversation with the city clerk's office, the only way that they can be taken care of together is if you postpone them again. So please explain to us, how are you going to vote? Not your actual vote, of course, but how you plan on handling this vote. Remember, there are procedures that have to be followed, and you can verify them with the city clerk or the city attorney, but feel they have to be voted on individually. So I would like an answer as how you might handle it, and would you consider putting 8C before 8A and B?
We'll comment that when we get there, but you're right. Appreciate your comments. The next, Marty Grossman, public comments.
As per the rules, I'm not going to speak directly about any of the upcoming agenda items. I'm going to speak about the responsibilities of being a city council person. Of course, you're expected to be there for all the ribbon cuttings to get your pictures in the paper. You're expected to be there for all the holidays to speak about how lucky we are to live in the United States, and I agree. There are things like being recognized in events like the prayer breakfast. One of the responsibilities that is expected of you is to make decisions. Many of you remember how Paul Bolin would agonize openly about making decisions, yet he kept on running for city council, knowing he had to do it. Now let's be honest. Mayor Ray and Councilman Solanke only ran for the city council once, obviously which they won. It's possible they may be surprised about the responsibilities. We cannot say the same for the other three. Councilwoman Chin and Councilman Polito each ran twice and both won. They knew the responsibilities. Councilman Edwards ran 3 times and won. He also knew of the responsibilities. You can postpone your decisions only so long, and then you have to do something. Oh, you can say you appreciate all the input of the residents and how proud you are to be a resident here. That sounds great to you, but it's meaningless to us. If you should decide to run for an office in the future, who would support a candidate who had at least 8 years of deficit spending and when forced to make a decision, did nothing? You will not look good. You will know that there are people in the city who will not let voters forget your past deeds. You cannot keep on saying that you want the residents to make the decisions. That's why we voted for you. I have said this before at city council meetings. Your responsibility is to make the tough decisions, whatever they may be. If you cannot make those decisions, please resign your position and we can get someone who can. I may not like your decision, but we are tired of you doing nothing except talk and then have the audacity to thank everybody for coming and speaking on these issues and then do nothing. Please, we ask of you to do something this evening. How long can you postpone these things? Thank you. I'd like to ask the city attorney a question first. When I was running meetings with commissions, this is the period of time where people give their thoughts and opinions, and then after their 5 minutes or whatever's over, at the end of the session, at the end of the agenda item, then the council gets to give their opinion. Is it proper for for the mayor to interrupt these people and change their thought process?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The mayor is in control of the meeting, and there is no procedure requirement for what you suggested, Mr. Grossman. So, yes, the mayor can speak with a speaker. Usually, you're correct that the city council does not engage the speakers, and that's usually to run the meeting efficiently. But the mayor has complete control of this meeting and is perfectly in his right to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering. There's so much for me to say and not enough time for me to show where the cuts could be made. Most of us understand you have your minds made up and that you will not make any cuts and will put the tax on the March election. This is because you're used to putting things off, just like you've done for at least the last 8 years. All of us who live here would love to spend more money than we make for at least 8 years and no negative consequence. It's interesting that members of the council have traveled outside the Los Angeles area many times, for example, Washington, D.C. Why, you say? Since we have a budget problem. They will tell you that they need to hear how other council members, legislatures handle things. Well, I definitely do not agree with them spending my money to travel for 8 years, and we don't even have it. This does not include council members Perlito and Solanke, because they work for a living. Councilwoman Chen is self-employed, so she can. I think it's very unfair for them to keep on spending our money. I think the presentation should have showed what people have said up to now, what cuts they would have made if they had the opportunity, but the presentation never changed. You never went over the suggestions that people had made. You never said anything about the 550 petitions asking the council to make the cuts wherever they could and not have the tax, which they ignored because obviously there's no way that they could believe that the people would sign the petitions. People in the audience and watching on TV will hear about the survey. Well, I wasn't going to address the CCPA, but for 8 years we've been running a deficit. If you would have taken the time and trouble to sell it 4 years ago, we could have used that money 2 years ago, but you never made a change. The same way with the Magnolia Power Plant. You could have done this years ago, but again, you never made the change. Ask the museum. You never should have even started it, knowing that 8 years we're running a deficit. Our commissioners get over $125 a month and then get a free meal every month. I know of one commissioner who says he does it and gives his stipend to charity, and I believe him. Well, I believe that the city is a charity now. It's interesting that the upper management has received their pay raise and the other employees have not. You will notice that I didn't mention public safety, not because I do not think that cuts could be made. I do not mention it because the council uses that as a threat over our head that if we don't approve the sales tax, they will have to cut public safety. Just recently, the city bought the house adjacent to Heritage Park for $1 million. I guess it was really important. You could have waited, or we could have done without it for a couple of years. This is $1 million that could have covered the deficit. And now they're in the negotiations for the church next door. Thank you very much.
Gail Grossman.
Good evening again. Like the song says, let's start from the very beginning. In May, which by the way was 5 months ago, you had a meeting to receive the potential budget. The only people who knew about it were those that get the city council agendas online or via social media. No, it was not televised for the residents to see and hear. Transparency did not exist. Then you had a few more meetings, but no budget conversation. Here comes July, 2 months later, and you start talking about the deficit budget for the 8th year in a row. No comments were made, but the residents started listening and were concerned. Newspapers and social media allowed residents to hear about it. You just continue talking, not doing anything. Wonder how you run your own homes. Hopefully not on a deficit budget, and you vote to continue with the deficit budget. Then we come to August 25th, where the community started to let you know their feelings. About 31 people spoke for over 2 hours. You were presented with petitions with over 550 signatures. And what did you do? Nothing. No comments. Just that we will continue this till next month. A couple people spoke to you at September 8th. Again, no comments. Guess you had already made up your mind. You were going to suck up the deficit and put the burden on the residents and raise the sales tax. First you were going to do it at 0.5%, but then you became greedy and went to 1% so you could try and do the things. Sure, if that's true, I have a bridge to sell you, or actually a museum I would like to sell. You said, let's wait and get more input from the community, but no town hall meetings. So close to 100 people have spoken and others signed the petition. Then came your September 22nd meeting, about 40 speakers again for 2 hours. Of course, some people are in support of your tax, but very, very few. Again, you said, let's wait and get more input and maybe have a town hall meeting. You did finally say, let's have a survey, a little late in the situation, which as we see, around 1,100 people answered it. How many did it twice? So let's talk about what's not happening. You have committed the city to an absolutely ridiculous obligation in regards to the Astor Museum. I don't know anyone who wants this place except you guys and staff and maybe a few car aficionados. No kids are interested. You maybe listened when it comes to CCPA and are looking at different options. The same goes for the Magnolia Power Plant. You talk about closing the library on the weekends. Just 2 weeks ago, the Friends of the Library had a book sale. They made over $4,500. Maybe you should see how they run their business and not close on weekends, but close early on Friday and less hours open during the week. Maybe you should consider disbanding all commissions and committees, except for planning. That would save money. How about reducing the staff inside the sheriff's station? Not the patrol or officers on the street, but the excessive management staff, detectives, criminalists. All of these and other tasks can be done from downtown. We don't need to have them here every day. They can be on call. How about the hours at the senior center, the swim center, the golf course, or some of our special events? Veterans Day is coming up in a couple of weeks. Do we know what the meaning of this day is? Not a day to have cookies and punch. It's a day to honor those who have fought for the freedoms that you have, who have fought for our country. Last but not least is cutting more of your perks. You volunteered for this job. You finally posted a survey, if that's what you call it. You still will not have the public town hall meetings, afraid of what might be asked and that you can't reply. The citizens of this city have a right to share their feelings, and you as our elected officials have an obligation to respond. No taxes. Balance your budget. Make those cuts. When will this take place? You answer us, not just with your vague thoughts. Remember, those were the days, my friend, when we had money, but not right now.